Hello and welcome to another Nimble video tutorial. So last week I was showing you how I can support React.js component building, and I wanted to recap on a few points that I didn't show in the previous video. So what I'm going to do is load, as you can see, I've added the React.js icon to the splash screen. I'm going to load this React.js project, and I wanted to make sure I show you some of the changes that I had made regarding it. In the previous video, you may have noticed I had to double click on these buttons. They were a little small, so I took the liberty to make them a little larger so that they're easy to click on and size your components. I also added the events specific to React.js so that when you want to add a component, if this is a React component, it will show you only the events, the did mount, will unmount, and constructor. And then it will bind to these events during the build process. I no longer have it supported under an export style feature. It is under the project build. So now, instead of exporting a component like I demonstrated on a previous video, you literally build your React.js component directly from the file menu. Those are just the modifications and changes that I made, and I didn't highlight them on the previous video. But after adding support for React.js, building a secure way to distribute plugins for Nimble, I had the groundwork needed for the final feature that I want to add into Nimble IDE, and that's widgets and component groups. As I mentioned before, when you use the REST contract, you get a series of grouped elements. This is a Nimble group. It's using a pointers or references to keep all of these elements together. But I also added the ability to embed components to create a more HTML style group. The pointer based or the group based design came from native code. Of course, when you're doing anything in native code, C++, you have to use pointers to reference groups and to keep things together. But HTML, of course, allows nested objects. So Nimble will support both references, and you can use them as you see fit. That being said, let's talk about widgets. When you select, the only other grouping element other than, of course, dialogues and forms is the frame. This frame now has special properties. When you highlight a frame, this is a grouped frame, and you right click on the dialogue, you get a series of cool new features. I showed you the justify, which allows you to block absolute position or inline block any element within your dialogue. But what I want to show you is the save widget property. You have a new tab called My Widgets, and what we're going to do is we're going to save this as a reusable widget. Right click, save it as a widget, and we'll just call it a name widget. The preview will show, and you now have that widget saved in your library. So I'm going to save all of these. These are the pre-made ones from the REST contract. And this is a time zone. And then I'm going to build a custom widget that is nested. So we no longer need this dialog anymore. And we'll just, let's make a new blank dialog. We'll use this like a scratch pad for building our widget. It all starts, of course, with a frame. Once you have a frame on any dialog, this is just our scratch pad dialog just for building stuff. We're going to turn on the embedded feature. So every element, as long as this frame has the focus, every element now that we add will be embedded into this element, into this frame. So we just need a label and a text box, and they're both now in the frame. As you can see, the frame is clipping the text box. As I said, we have cool new features for justification. Pressing Ctrl J will allow us to justify this label and make it block. Once it's set to block, it automatically tacks to the top and stretches across the entire width of the frame. We'll do the same thing to the text box, and now we have a seamless control that is sizable, of course, by the frame because it's blocked within the frame. But you notice how it's trimming the absolute edge of the size of the frame. So we can go into the frame itself and Control J for justification again and set an 8-pixel padding on the frame. And then you notice you have a nice little border edging between the frame and all the elements within it. Adjust the size, and we now have our first widget. To really make a proper widget within Nimble JS, the idea is that this is supposed to be reusable, so you want to have generic naming. Instead of calling this label, we'll call this caption, if they fit with a caption property. And instead of calling this a text box, we'll call this value, because it will hold values that the user can type in. And then instead of calling this a frame, we'll just call it a field. So now we have a field widget that has a caption and a value. Right click, save it as a widget, field. And it instantly goes to your My Widgets tab. If we delete this component, because this is the original, now if we add a field into this dialog, we can control the name. So let's add the field, and we'll just call this one an age field. We'll add another one, we'll call it name. We'll add a third, we'll call it phone number. Now we have 3 fields, each have a caption and a value. And to keep track of them, the idea is to make sure that the label also says the field name. I'm tempted to make this happen automatically when you add the element, but I'm still on the fence whether I want to add that much help or automatic features to the design. Moving right along, we're going to adjust the age, keep the name about that size, and maybe shrink this just a little bit so it can hold a phone number. Now within the same frames property, we can right click and select all frames, and then of course Control J to show the justification, and we'll inline block all these guys. Now we have all of our fields in a responsive format so that they will automatically word wrap or push down to the next line depending on the screen size. You notice that there's still a dotted bordering around each element in each frame. And that's so that you can see it when you're editing it, but the same rules apply. You select all of them, you go to the styles property, and you'll see that the border is set. We can just change that to none and apply it. And then all the fields and the bordering disappear so that they look more natural. You can create as many custom widgets as you want. And I suppose in the future I will be adding some functionality so that you can package widgets with JavaScript code on the events as you see fit. Make it as complicated as you want and justify each widget so that it can be drag drop later for ease of use. This is one of the distinguishing factors as to why Nimble is the most powerful framework available for JavaScript. The Nimble solution. Thank you for watching.